So before we get into the video, it is not sponsored. I just rewatched it and was like, this seems like a sponsored video without the disclaimer, but it's not sponsored. I just thought it would be a fun idea. Okay, so there's this funky little website that you may or may not have heard of called Overframe. It's basically just a website where you can share Warframe builds and you can also rate other people's builds and you can even comment on them. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to try out the 3 highest rated builds on the website for primary weapons to see whether they're any good or not. All the links for the website as well as all the builds that I'm going to be trying out are going to be in the video description. So in at number 1 we have the Pestilence Carrier for Ignis Wraith. This is the highest voted build on the entire website with a grand total of 1,878 votes. The build was posted by TheMoon85 and it runs Galvanized Chamber for multi-shot, Vital Sense for crit damage, Malignant Force and Primed Cryo Rounds for Vital, Galvanized Aptitude for status, Hunter Munitions for slash procs from crits, Crit Delay for crit chance, Vile Acceleration for fire rate at the cost of a little bit of damage, and it runs primary Merciless for damage and reload speed. Now you are supposed to run primed rifle ammo mutation for this, but my Ignis Wraith setup is a little bit different, so I would have to reformat it, which would break my setup, so I'm just gonna run it with carrier and get ammo mutation that way. For our simulacrum test, we're gonna do Steel Path at level 125, and we're gonna run 10 butchers, mainly to stack Merciless, and then 10 corrupted heavy gunners. The setup is pretty straightforward. It's basically your standard Hunter Munitions Vital setup, but it does add a nice bit of extra DPS through Vile Acceleration, so you get a ton of extra fire rate, which equals faster procs. It's effective up to about level 110, maybe 120, though at that point Eximus units start to become a little bit of a problem, but you can of course push it a little bit further if you give it some either Companion or Warframe buffs. This pretty much squeezes as much damage out of the Ignis Wraith as you can without incorporating other mechanics such as Zephyr Tornadoes. So level 110, 120 in Steel Path for the Ignis Wraith is pretty much as far as it will go on its own. The build is somewhat different to what I like to run on the Ignis Wraith, but I can definitely see why this is the most upvoted build on the entire website. It is a solid 10 out of 10. Good job, TheMoon85. In at number 2, with 1,209 votes, we have the Kuva Bramma Shira Astra Bramma by TheMoon85 once again, and this one is real sweaty. It runs Galvanized Chamber for multi-shot, Primed Firestorm for AoE, Primed Bane for faction damage, Hunter Munitions for slash procs from crits, Critical Delay for crit chance, a Vital Sense for crit damage, then a combination of Primed Cryo Rounds and Infected Clip for a ton of vital damage, and we top it off with Arrow Mutation in the Exilus as well as Primary Merciless for damage and reload. For the Simulacrum Showcase, we will do the same thing as with the Ignis, but we're gonna use a regular Grenier to match my Bane mod. This is once again a very well thought out build that squeezes the absolute maximum out of the Kuva Bramma. It pretty much uses all the different layers of damage multiplication you can squeeze on a weapon to achieve maximum damage, and then it tops it off with Primed Firestorm, which not only gives you better clear, but it also gives you better single target because of the overlapping explosions. This kind of setup is almost necessary on the Kuva Bramma if you want to take it into Steel Path, because you have so little ammo, you have 6 shots, that's it. So you have to do as much damage with it as possible and kill as many enemies as you can to sustain your ammo pickups if you don't want to use ammo pizzas or you're not running something like a dispensary. So this setup is absolutely perfect if you like the Kuva Bramma and you want to take it as deep into Steel Path as humanly possible. So even though I'm not the biggest fan of Bane mods because I just don't like to faff around with my mods every time I want to fight a different faction, the Moon85 comes in once again with an absolute banger, so this is another 10 out of 10. It even shreds acolytes really well, like most of them will go down in 1 or 2 shots. And the final build on the menu with a grand total of 1,170 votes, we have the 3-forma Eidolon Bad Boy Hunter Big Damage by Gauge. Now one thing you might notice here is that this setup is not maxed out because it's running high voltage instead of Stormbringer, and he actually pointed this out in the comments down below. It's simply because it saves you Forma. So here we are, we're running Serration for damage, Split Chamber for multi-shot, Heavy Caliber for damage at the cost of accuracy, Vital Sense for crit damage, Critical Delay for crit chance, High Voltage and Hellfire for radiation, and then Vigilante Armaments for some extra multi-shot. This is the first build where I was somewhat unsure because of that Heavy Caliber, because while it doesn't necessarily ruin the accuracy of the primary shot, the multi-shot round does fly off to the side quite a bit. But as it turns out, if you can stick close enough to the Eidolon, you can very easily negate the negative accuracy because, you know, if you're close, it doesn't matter that the bullets are flying a little bit to the side. However, if you're not a big fan of sniffing the Eidolon's toes throughout the entire fight and you would rather fight them from afar, you can take heavy caliber out and replace it with crow rounds or primed crow rounds for cold damage or even hammer shot for more crit damage. So all in all, for what it is, you know, a relatively budget Eidolon killer that just needs 3-4 mana, no primed mods, no galvanized mods. Not that you would really want to run galvanized mods for Eidolons because in most scenarios they're just worse. The setup does what it's supposed to do, so I'm gonna give it a solid 9. The only reason it loses a point is because every now and then you will miss a shot or multi-shot round because of the heavy caliber, and it's also running high voltage instead of Stormbringer, which is not quite as good because status does basically nothing when you're fighting an Eidolon. But, you know, again, it does what it's supposed to do really well, so it doesn't really matter that it's not 100% maxed out. And that is pretty much it for the video. So once again, the links to Overframe as well as the 3 builds that you just saw are in the video description down below. I thank you very much for watching as always, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you'd like to support the channel, you can check out the memberships and stuff down below as well. And I will see you next time. Bye bye.